Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. In today's video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make these delicious sugar-free pecan sandies. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how easy it is to make these cookies and how quickly the dough comes together. And these cookies are crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, and have a nice bit of crunch from the pecans distributed throughout the cookie. By the way, I've tested these cookies with my husband and me who are keto, and my keto and non-keto family and friends, and the unanimous opinion was that they were really good. I hope you do too. I always feel very flattered when my carb-loving family or friends say, "Are you sure these are keto?" I don't think there could be a higher compliment because they can't tell. And the taste of this cookie is somewhere between a butter cookie and a shortbread cookie, but as I said, a bit more crunchy because of the pecan pieces. Before continuing the video, I would like to ask a special favor. Could you please show your support by watching the entire video, giving it a thumbs up, leaving a comment, and if you're new to the channel or haven't done so before, please subscribe. That's the best thing you can do to support my channel. I'd like to remind you that I always post the link to the written recipe in the description box, as well as any other recipes I mention or some of the important ingredients. So please go down to the description box and check things out there. The macronutrient ratio for each of these amazing sugar-free pecan sandies is 6.2 to 1, with 1.6 grams of total carbs, 0.5 grams of soluble fiber, 0.7 grams of insoluble fiber, resulting in 0.4 grams of net carbs per cookie. And that's really good because now you can enjoy several cookies without feeling guilty. Now let's get baking. The first thing I do is assemble all of my ingredients and make sure that I have everything on hand before starting the recipe. As you can see, most of these ingredients are pretty standard for keto baking. The next thing you have to do is take your pecan halves and chop them up. I like to chop my pecans into fairly small pieces. I don't want big chunks because I want a nice even texture and granularity throughout the cookie. So after giving everything a rough chop, I give it one more chop in order to get the right size for my cookies. And to make things clearer, and especially if you're new to baking, I have separated this first part into two steps. Step 1, in a medium bowl or your stand mixer bowl, add the unsalted room temperature butter and your confectioner sweetener. Now add the very finely ground salt. And if you're using a stand mixer, use a paddle attachment and beat everything together so that the texture is nice, creamy, and velvety. And I also add the vanilla, but if you want to change the flavor profile a bit, you can substitute and give these cookies a bit of a southern bourbon cookie flavor. Use rum extract and beat everything together to combine. Now for step 2, place a sieve over the bowl, and into the sieve add the almond flour, the coconut flour, your glucomannan, and then either by using a whisk or your hand, I like to sift everything through the sieve. This helps to mix everything together and also aerates everything so that you have a nice even texture of your dry ingredients and no clumps. And then using my paddle attachment again, I whip everything together so that the ingredients are well combined, but don't over whip. Mix until well blended and you notice that your dough sticks together. Because the butter will stick to the sides and bottom of the bowl, don't forget to stop and scrape everything down once or twice. At this point, I add the chopped pecans and I use a spatula just to fold pecans into the dough. Then I scoop out the dough from the bowl and dump it onto my cling wrap or parchment paper. Because this is a large quantity of dough, I divide it into 2 equal amounts. Using half of the dough, I first use my hands to shape the dough into a rough log and then roll the log into an evenly thick 12-inch long or 30.5 centimeter long tube. Now it's time to wrap the dough tube very tightly with cling wrap. Give it a bit of a roll to even everything out, and I want to prevent the bottom edge from flattening, so I'm going to use these forms that I bought from Wilton when I took my cake decorating course a long time ago. But don't worry if you don't have these forms. All you have to do is get the tube from the paper roll, cut it down the entire length, and then open it up and use that to put your dough in, and this will help prevent your dough from flattening. Now, having completed the first row, repeat and do the same with the second batch of dough. Because this is a very buttery dough, it's really important that you place the 2 rolls into the freezer for a minimum of 30 minutes. What you want is the dough to be quite stiff, but not completely frozen. And just before getting my pecan sandy rolls from the freezer, I'm going to do 2 prep steps. I'm going to line my baking sheet with parchment paper. I'm also going to move the oven rack from the middle position to the bottom 3rd position and preheat the oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius. Now here's my well-chilled cookie dough. Unwrap it and it's time to slice. You can slice these cookies to make them very thin, or as I like to do, to make them about 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeters thick sections. This will give me 24 cookies per roll. You may think these are very small medallions, but they will expand a little bit when you're baking. And when you're cutting, cut all the medallions in one go, and then transfer the medallions onto the parchment lined baking sheet. And when you're doing that, make sure you're leaving plenty of space between each of the cookies, about 2 inches apart or 5 centimeters apart between each medallion. Again, you want to have enough space for the cookies to expand and also so that the hot air can circulate all the way around the cookie. This will allow for the cookies to bake more evenly. I forgot to mention at the beginning, before chopping up all my pecans, I chose 24 of the nicest pecan halves, which I'm now going to place in the center of each of the cookies, and then press the pecans down gently into the dough so they stick better. Now that my cookies are all on the cookie sheet, and if you notice that the dough has softened, place the entire baking sheet with all the cookies back into the freezer for 15 minutes, or into the fridge for 30 minutes. For best results, you want the dough to be cold when you're putting it in the oven. This will prevent the cookies from over-expanding and flattening out. So now it's time to bake the cookies, and I'm going to place my cookie sheet in the bottom 1/3 of the oven and set the timer for 15 minutes. Depending on your oven and how comfortable you feel with it, I would suggest very strongly that at about the 7 or 8 minute time point, you rotate your cookie sheet 180. At 15 minutes, check if they still look really raw in the center. You could give it another 3 minutes. What you're looking for is the cookies to stay very pale, but to have a very light golden rim on the bottom, the part that is on the parchment. The cookies may appear that they're not quite done, but don't worry. When your cookies are done, remove them from the oven and place them on your counter. Then let the cookies cool to room temperature in the cookie sheet. Don't try to moving them just yet. And it's important to leave them in the cookie sheet to cool because the freshly baked cookies are very crumbly and they could break or fall apart. And you don't want to ruin the cookies at this point. When your cookies are completely cooled down, transfer them from the cookie sheet onto a wire cooling rack. This will allow the bottoms to dry out as well. How long you leave them there will depend on you, but I would recommend that you leave them to air dry overnight. This will allow the flavor to really develop, and both the exterior and interior will be the perfect texture. Now, I've only made 1 roll today because all I need is 24 cookies. So you may be wondering what to do with the second roll. The good news is this dough freezes beautifully. But before freezing, this is a personal preference, I like to cut all my cookies into medallions in the same thickness as I did my first roll. Then I get a freezer safe container and line it with parchment paper, or you can use cling wrap, and place the unbaked or raw cookies into the container. I also place a sheet of parchment paper between the layers so that it's easier to remove the cookies when I'm ready to bake them. And the really good news is these cookies can be kept frozen for several months. And then when you're ready to bake, just take them out of the freezer, transfer them to your fridge overnight, or let them thaw slightly, but make sure that they're still quite cool when you're ready to bake them, as we did with the freshly made ones. And this is especially good because you can have these cookies on hand anytime you have a craving or you have some company coming over and they're amazing prep ahead treats for holidays and especially Christmas. And when you're ready to put the cookies in the freezer, cover this top layer as well and then snap on the lid, and don't forget to always label and date your containers. At this time of year, I especially like to do a lot of prep ahead and plan as many treats as I can that I can freeze and have on hand. I really love holidays, especially Christmas, and there's nothing nicer than being able to serve freshly made cookies or other treats and have the house have that wonderful aroma of freshly baked cookies. And if you agree, I hope you try this recipe. And let me know if there's any other cookies you would like me to demonstrate that are either specifically for Christmas or any other time of the year. So your requests would be greatly appreciated and a pleasure to make. I hope that you have found my sugar-free pecan sandies recipes both interesting and useful. And if you have stayed with me until the end, thank you very much for watching my video. I do hope that you come back and watch the next video when it's posted. Until then, have a very happy and healthy day. Cheers!